see money matters as a tough topic. Sometimes people shy away from it. Sometimes people get a bit sensitive about it. So I'm sure you'd agree that it is very important, especially for our generation, that we are not reckless or irresponsible with something as important as the instrument of money in whatever form it comes. So we are here to dig into your plethora of experience in the finance industry. We'll be taking questions from the congregation as time goes on, but we already have curated questions for you, and we would love if you would oblige us in sharing. So let's get into it because, again, time is what is money. All right, so we love this setting. I mean, you would not it's not the usual convention to get money being spoken about in church because it's seen as a form of idolatry in some sects, I mean, in some churches. So it's a quiet thing or it's something no one wants to talk about. However, we know better that even if the Bible, Jesus spoke about the parable of the talents and he gave his servants money to go and trade with. And also, in looking at that passage, there was a part where he spoke to the servant that didn't do anything. He said, "You should have given it to bankers." So I'm looking at it that maybe he's like, they know what to do. So I'm sure you see we're working in wisdom where we're getting our information from this morning. So let me start off with this question and I would pose it to both of you. Um, so, what does it mean to be a Christian in the marketplace? And how has that shaped your work ethic and choices? In an industry that often prioritizes profit over principle, how do you maintain your integrity and values? Are there biblical principles that have shaped how you manage money or make business decisions? And have you ever had to choose between profit and purpose? And how did you handle it? I know it's a lot, but it's really centered on being a Christian in the marketplace. What does that look like for you? And how has the journey been?
Good morning, everybody. It's indeed a privilege to be before all of you to speak, and I thank God for this opportunity. But to answer your questions and react to a couple of statements you made, for me, I believe money is a tool that we all must use to serve God. So it's not a crime to be wealthy, it's not a crime to seek money. It's the way, the means, and what we do with it that is very important. So if we use money to the glory of God, then that's perfect. So that's to deal with. People will say we're talking about money in the church. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Um, with regards to how my faith has helped, I'm Christian, so I'm allowed to say my faith has helped me in the marketplace. First of all, I try to live my life by certain principles: humility, one, discipline, delayed gratification, purpose, a sense of purpose, empathy, and obviously I have to drive. And the ultimate objective is to win, right? You have to be a winner. That's the essence of our prayers all the time. In a lot of ways, that has helped me with my decision making. In an environment where integrity is not really the order of the day, in owing to several reasons: pressure for wealth, peer pressure. Um, a lot of us don't know what is right and what is wrong anymore. We really can't differentiate between both. I think my foundation from a spiritual perspective has allowed me make very right decisions that I believe have worked very well. It's important because you're managing depositors' funds by virtue of what you've all heard that I do. You're managing depositors' funds, you're managing shareholders' funds as well. What you have as a banker, really, and as a bank, a financial institution, is your reputation. The moment that is up in flames, you lose everything. So it's absolutely important that you live by some of these rules that are set. And chances are that if you do all this, if these are your guiding principles, you would run into less problems than most. So I hope I've answered your question to some extent. And if there are any details, additional details you want, I'll respond.
So we just started. There's still more to come, but thank you for that. Taiwo, please, can you also give your own?
First of all, a big thank you for inviting my wife and myself to ODL. So thank you, Pastor Show and Pastor Kemi. I think Judy has captured almost everything, so I don't know where to start from. I think for me, like him, I'm also a Christian, and we hold very, very strong Christian values as a family, even from what my generation passed from my parents down to us. So we live with certain attributes or behavior. So I'm also from a family of bankers. So naturally, there's certain things we've also learned. Diligent, humility, as I said, empathy, generosity. You must also give back. Likewise, wealth is, as is rightly said, is a tool. Money is a tool to achieve so many things, especially in an environment like Nigeria, where you're saying that as the order of the day has always been, how quick can I get money? It's even worse in the generation today in terms of the social media and all the things we see. People see delayed gratification is no longer the order of the day. Reason why we use that word delayed gratification is the first thing they taught us in training school. Huh? Yeah, that first of all, first, money is patient. It takes time. It takes time to build wealth. Mistake people tend to make is that we assume that wealth is made instantly. And if you could just be patient, you understand, and go by certain principles, compounding interest, as over time, the money will come. But I think I will say that. I think in terms of biblical verses, because I think Proverbs 21:5, the plans of the diligent lead solely to plenty, but those of everyone who is hasty surely to poverty, which basically means that it's also how you manage your time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I love that you use that term delayed gratification. It also coincides with that phrase microwave society. So everybody wants everything done fast. Instantly, no one is taking time out to look at the cost of actually going into business, investing your funds, or what have you. So I'll start with you, Taiwo, just because you said that. What's the biggest money mistake that you see first time entrepreneurs make, and how can they avoid it?
Not realizing that not every business is viable. Mistake we tend to overstate income and we tend to understate the cost. I think those are the major issues. Not having a detailed plan. I think it's always very important to have a business plan. At least have a structure of what you want to do. You might not plan out as what you want to achieve, but the reality is that you must have set objectives and goals. Not having the right advisors. I think it's also very important that I always believe an individual as a community. You work among your friends and your social network, not leveraging it enough. I think a mistake a lot of people tend to make. I think I'll leave it there.
Jide, please, can you weigh in as well? What mistakes do you see first time entrepreneurs or even entrepreneurs as a whole make when it comes to setting up their businesses or going into an industry? And how can they avoid it? What should they do?
I think one of the problems most people have is not having a sense of purpose, long-term purpose, right? Most times people always join or follow a bandwagon, right? There's nothing original in their ideas, in their objectives, and it's a copy and paste. You're running another man's dreams, another man's vision based on what you see on social media, what based on what you've heard from a friend as being the next viable thing without knowing the fundamentals driving it. That for me is a problem most young people have. You have to have a niche for yourself, identify what your purpose is, know what value creation you want to you want to impact on the society, yourself first and then the society. And once you identify that, the next thing for me is you now need to look at the project viability. You need to do your due diligence, come up with your business due diligence to be sure that it's viable. And once you're certain and you're clear in your mind that whatever you want to embark on is going to be viable, you know what your expectations are based on your numbers that you've worked out. The next thing is for you to have the discipline and the staying power to withstand a lot of the turbulence that you'll be faced with, no matter how interesting, how potentially successful a venture may seem. There are bound to be challenges, big challenges, and if you don't have the staying power, if you don't have a sense of purpose, right, which is basically your foundation of whatever you're doing, you're going to falter and you're going to drop off at the slightest trial or hurdle. So for me, that's one thing a lot of people are faced with. Another problem is I believe in 1% of 100 as against 100% of 0. A lot of people have ideas, very selfish with how they believe they should execute those ideas. They do not realize that you need to share some of your dreams. You need to get people to buy into your dreams, vision, and objectives, right, in order to grow. One man cannot do it alone. You need either people to buy your ideas, you need people to either buy your products, you need people to help you sell your products, or whatever venture you're into. Therein lies access to financing. If you're not a wealthy kid, wealthy child, you don't have that inheritance to leverage on. You'll probably need certain people to either invest in your ideas, and therefore you're not going to have 100% of 100%. You're going to need to share. More often than not, a lot of young people don't realize that. In fact, elderly people most times also don't realize that in order for you to succeed, you need to be able to embrace this kind of ideas. What else again do I think people can do to overcome some of the challenges that they might be faced with? We've spoken about discipline, we've spoken about delayed gratification, hard work. I think those are the values you need. It's not a one size fits all, but there are certain basic principles that are pervasive across board when you want to go into any venture. And if you've done your due diligence, your business plan, and everything, your financial model, depending on whatever activity you want to go into, and you know what your expectations are. If you're expecting to make £1 billion, for instance, don't look at the next man and say, but he's making £1 trillion, and you want to turn a venture that cannot make more than £1 billion into a £1 trillion venture. All of a sudden, you start to cut corners. You start to do the wrong things, and your business will crumble, right? So that's where I'd like to leave it for now.
Thank you so much.
I think just not to
please.
chip in. I mean, for younger ones, as much as possible, avoid debt. I think that is It's very important to avoid debt, especially if you're not, especially debt for consumption. I think that's also very important. Means debt for investments. At least you can leverage on it, and the returns of the investments would pay off the debt. But as much as possible, avoid debt. I think that's very, very. I think that's one of the few things a lot of people tend to make, errors tend to make, and you don't have to start big. I think mistake a lot of young entrepreneurs start. We all assume that we can do everything all at once. I think you can take it one step at a time, gradually grow and build, as against trying to, like a startup business, trying to get the full gamut of workers, the HR, When you start off, you are the HR, you are the production director, you are everything. As you get bigger, you start getting accountants, getting other third parties to come and to work with you. You can also leverage a lot of things on outsourcing. I think is also very important. Another aspect is try to engage in where the upfront cost is not that high. Businesses that you don't have to put that much cash in. Try as much as possible to venture into businesses where you can actually get some money upfront. At least let them pay you a certain percentage, so it can also aid your working capital. Also relying on friends and family for capital. I think that's also very, very key. Over time, as your reputation starts to develop, you can also start looking for other source of financing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. That is key because I think a lot of people feel to carry on that mantle of being an entrepreneur or CEO, you must have, a form of debt portfolio with the bank. That shows you're serious. But you really don't. I know banks don't want to hear that because they need you to come and collect, some loans in whatever format. But it is true. Reach out to your nearest and dearest. Start small, and then you scale up with time. Structure needs to be there, but it doesn't have to be okay. I have to hire this. I have to hire that. I have to, because then you put yourself possibly in a vortex of issues that may come up later. Then there was something, Jide, you mentioned as well about purpose, and in going into business with purpose, because it's true, a lot of people, oh, I want to go into catering, oh, I want to go into events management because there are so many parties in Lagos, I want to go into fashion. Everyone is doing that copy and pasting. You did say you have to look at the risk, analyze the cost of the industry. And I was going to say, if you're going with purpose, should that still stop you? That's one. Then two, so basically you might be taking a risk because you're called to do something, but then if you look at the industry based on what the economy is saying, it may not be a viable thing to take on at that time. So I want to ask this question, which I will pose to both of you. I know you've both overseen massive portfolios, in this industry, and you've taken bold steps during crisis. How do you assess and take calculated risks in business? Because that's what you're saying entrepreneurs should do. So how have you done that? And what would you advise us to do when it comes to assessing these risks that may come up?
In taking calculated risk, there's also the cost of risk, right? So for me, if you're going into a venture, you should have, um, you should set yourself a benchmark for which once I get to this threshold, if it's not working, I pull back, right? So you know where to cut your losses. As that's the way I see things. Um, there's no point trying to reinforce failure. If something doesn't work, it does not work. And chances of you getting to a point where it does not work is very slim if you've done your the heavy lifting before ever venturing into that business. For instance, you've done your due diligence, you've done your all your analysis to be sure that it makes sense, right? When I say purpose, I'm a very practical and pragmatic person. I'm not the kind of person that just hears voices from, just hears, listens to voices and says, well, I've been told to jump and I start to jump. No, right? I'm very pragmatic. Everything has to be very well aligned. If I get, if I feel it has been put in me in the spirit to do X, I will seek clarity. I will not just move. So I don't want purpose to be misinterpreted. Purpose means you know exactly what you want to do. You know the niche you want to carve. You know the value you want to add. You know how you want to differentiate yourself from everyone else in whatever field I choose to embark on. You know what your objectives are. For me, that really is purpose. And you're really going to stick to it regardless of what happens, right? Doesn't necessarily mean I'm just going to be listening to voices, their challenges, and I'm still saying I want to keep going. I don't believe in reinforcing failure, right? So you should have your limits for which if things are not working, you should take a detour. Very, very importantly, you have to be very nimble in your thoughts and in how you choose to execute things. There are different routes to an objective. Very noble routes to achieving or attaining an objective. So you must not be too set in your ways with regards to how you intend to achieve an objective. I don't know, what's the other question again? I don't know if
How
I've
do you
answered.
assess and take calculated risk? I think you.
Yeah, it's by your due diligence. Before your due diligence, you say to my, I don't want to go into any technicalities. I'm just keeping everything, very generic. But it's the due diligence. For instance, if I were to be an entrepreneur today, or okay, let me not use myself as an example. Let me use my wife as an example. She's an entrepreneur, right? She's into food and beverages, food packaging. And I remember her telling me about 10 plus years ago that, you can sell sand in this country and make money. You can sell stones and make money. And I said to her, okay, but whatever you're doing has to be very noble. And she said, oh, she wanted to go into food production and packaging. And I said, fantastic. But if this is going to if this is going to take anything away from the home, it's going to take anything away from your health, I won't really be for it. But she started very small. Going back to what Taiwo said, started very small. She had purpose, she had objectives that she felt, she had a vision, and she had a mission. Most of which I thought I'd bought into, but with every challenge, because the vision and the mission and the objectives were not really mine. They were not original to me. I was just tagging along and supporting her. So at every hurdle, I would be, pull back. You need to stop this. You need to. But she just kept going and going and going. Yeah, there were challenges, but there were challenges that could always be surmounted because she had envisaged a significant amount of those challenges. She didn't take bank debt like Taiwo has advised you against. If you have the opportunity of leveraging on family and friends, so she could leverage on me as family to run. But today, yeah, she was ready to share in her success. She wasn't about 100% of zero. Oh, my husband mustn't be part of this. My husband mustn't, be associated with this from a financial benefit standpoint. It has to be about me. No, she was willing to share. And today, what our business is produce is a household name in most homes. I'm sure most of you may have heard of it. Nini Foods, Nini Foods and the likes. Yeah, they do a lot. So, and over time, she's been able to overcome a lot of the hurdles she was faced with. She may say in some court, if she were here today, she would say maybe the Holy Spirit told her to start the business. Well, that will pass. But there was that conviction within her. And I think a lot of what we've said here, it's a cocktail of so many things that brings about success for entrepreneurs. And yeah, I hope I've answered a significant part of your questions.
Yes, you have. Thank
Okay,
you.
cool.
One thing I like with what you said is so purpose. And meanwhile, we know that if you have a conviction, most times the Holy Spirit that is saying, do it, don't be
Yeah.
scared. So it is the Holy Spirit.
Mhm.
But I think ultimately, seeing the success of her business, I love that it was from a small standpoint in the beginning, and then she kept persevering, regardless of, you know what, let's pull back. It doesn't make sense. Let's stop. Let's not reinforce. What was your phrase?
Failure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we bless the Lord that she kept going, and thank God, her brand is a household brand when it comes to food. So thanks for sharing that. I don't know if Taiwo, you have anything to add to that.
For me, I will also edge. I think like every risk, there's always going to be risk. Success lies in the other side of difficulty. So for me, one thing I will always do is trying to edge to see what can I do to edge against any unseen difficulties or challenges. So I'll try and do that. I'll give a typical example. I woke up one day and all of a sudden Donald Trump decided to, what did he do again?
He has done many things, which we love.
And the market does seem to crash. So the best thing for me to do, we already had some position in the market. The only thing I could do was also to short, so I can also mitigate my losses. Yeah, exactly, the tires. So I said that for me, anytime there's difficulties, it's for me to look for. It's not for me to bury my head under the sand, but to look for an opportunity in those challenges, and that's where you actually try and find the success. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So speaking of Donald Trump, there was something I noticed he said when he was being inaugurated. He spoke about the golden era. And a lot of people have, or when people are talking about investments, they speak about, oh, get into gold, it's not about all these other investment financial instruments that you'd use. So I wanted to ask, how do we balance managing financial risk with taking advantage of investment opportunities like investing in gold, moving away from the traditional investment opportunities that we know? What advice can you, because I know you have, you know, experience in the investment arm of things. So what advice can you give us on investment instruments we should be looking at right now? And how easy or difficult is it for the average person to begin looking at building an investment portfolio?
I personally always look at it that investment, first of all, going to school is an investment. So we all are investors. You invested in yourself. Because when people say investment is anything that you put effort into that can generate you income. So your education, going to school, anything. And I always look at it that there are three classes of investments one should have. The first one is the risk-free assets, asset class. They're looking at your fixed deposits, treasury bills, any investment that has a maturity less than 1 year. So those ones are easy. One thing is certain, you can't lose your capital. You understand? Buying government debt. The second asset class, I would look at it as your risky bucket. That's looking at things like buying equities, derivatives. What that means that you can lose some of your capital. And the investments are usually tiered more than 1 year. Bonds and if you're doing trading FX, all that. The third asset class that I would talk about is more of an aspirational dream bucket. That's looking at things like paintings, buying watch, buying an antique car. The truth is they rise in value, you understand, but they don't give you cash flow. So for me, one thing I always try to ensure that as an investor, certain things must happen. You must have capital gains. That means I bought something at 1 naira. Is it going to go by to 2 naira? Number two, cash flow. Is it going to pay me dividends? Is it going to pay me Coupons is going to pay me rental income. So those are areas to look at. Now, suddenly, I kind of changed my mind recently, and I would never have said I would invest in digital assets, but all of a sudden, I'm being forced to, trying to understand the younger generation and trying to get into that. So I'm a proud owner of some digital assets as well. Although it's against my natural training that at least one thing is any assets I invest in must actually give those two attributes minimum. That means cash flow and capital gains.
And
So
how has it been so far?
it's
This
been
new
you know,
world you've come into.
it's been fantastic.
Okay.
It's been fantastic. But I would say this also. I'll put a caveat to it. I said, as you invest over time, you start looking at different asset classes in which to invest in. Not put all your eggs in one basket. You understand? I think that you must always have a diverse portfolio. And I minimum maybe puts in just 1%, just in case. Because I don't want to be one of those people that told you that when the thing was at this price, you missed out on it. So I've just, and again, just to also to understand it. The only way you can understand an investment, you understand, is by doing what? Is by investing in it. I've always tell people, if you invest in things you know about, you understand, there's some back of the envelope valuation you can easily do. What does that mean? For example, if I ask you guys, how many of you guys have Apple phones? And a lot of people have Apple phones, and you're not an investor. I tell you, so you're just a consumer. You must always, at one point in time, always, to me, I have Apple shares because I have an iPad, I have the whole thing. When I'm buying into it, I tell myself I'm also an investor, so I'm always going to get the returns from it. So I think it's also very important that invest in things you love, things you like. I think, and things that are also serving a purpose. In today's, right now, things like areas looking at AI is a good investment outlet to look at. We're in Nigeria. The two richest Nigerians are into commodities. So naturally instinct, you understand, you must venture into commodities. I mean, there are quite a number of different outlets one can look at.
Thank you very much. It's like, and it's not like the Holy Spirit is actually here, because a lot of my you guys are already touching on some of those things. So which brings me to my next question, and I'll start with you, Jide. So I know you transitioned from traditional banking to fintech leadership. Speaking of digital finance, how has it been for you? What are the trends currently, especially when it comes to businesses in Nigeria? How do we begin to prepare for these global shifts in energy, in AI, and in digital currency? Because, in the West, they're all about their cryptos and so many other acronyms that I hear online that I'm like, which one is this one again? But for us in Nigeria, it's a thing, but it's not really a thing. The fintech space is expanding. But what should we be looking at? How has it been for you? What trends can you advise us on? And how do we start to prepare for that global shift in our generation?
Okay, thank you. I think the Gen Zs are even in the best position to advise us with regards to AI. But let me say something based on at least what have been thought. AI will not replace human beings, at least now. So don't be afraid. What AI will do would be to augment our intelligence, augment our decision making, help us with making the right decisions, predictive, and then outcomes. So that's what AI is going to do, at least in the immediate and medium term. Because AI that we talk about is a function of every single input human beings put into some form of database. And that's what gives us gives the AI a lot of the impetus to make decisions. Um, with regards to fintech space, I think we're already leaving it. The truth is, a lot of businesses need to be digitized. Either your route to market has to be digitized in a very um, needs to be digitized. Either your marketing strategy has to be um, digitized, and let us not overemphasize or make too much out of the fintech space. It's basically in an e-format, selling your goods, receiving your sales proceeds as optimal as possible, and that's basically it. Um, in my own opinion, it helps with bringing about operational efficiency into your respective businesses. Operational efficiency brings about reduced costs, improved margins, and ultimately profitability. So I would like to encourage everybody to, as much as possible, digitize their processes. It also saves time, which is part of the operational efficiency. You probably will not need as many headcounts as you have in running your respective businesses. Um, you're not going to need somebody chasing checks. You're not going to be storing checks in your or printing papers to write instructions to your banks to make transfers. You can do almost everything at the speed of 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 light. So it allows you scale up your operations as well very, very, very quickly. And it's really dependent on whatever venture you choose to embark on. It can be adapted to whatever you choose to embark on. What was your third question again? Sorry, or was
Yes,
it
no,
was
I
a three
think
in one?
yes, it was AI, digital currency, and pretty much the fintech
With the
space.
digital currency, I'll be very honest with you. um, a couple of years ago, my late brother-in-law tried to get me into this, even though it was against my ethos with regards to my profession. Um, I'm one who likes to do things that make sense to me, right? I believe I'm smart enough for you to explain something and I would understand. I would never do anything I do not understand. I would not move an inch. I would stand still because I believe if where I am standing is not burning, right? I'd rather just stand there than go into the unknown where I'm not sure of what the outcome would be, and there's a chance of me burning, or getting burned. So he tried to explain this digital currency thing to me. What we both took away from it at the time, about 5, 6 years ago, was that there were no fundamentals driving any of those cryptos. No, absolutely no fundamentals. It was just based on perception and some narrative being pushed along the lines of, some people call it the New World Order. Some people call it, they choose to call it whatever they choose to call it, depending on who's speaking. There are no narratives, no fundamentals driving anything. And you keep hearing that there are going to be laws that will be um, brought about by the U.S. government to try to bring about some sanity and governance around how these things will work. But the truth about it is, yes, I know people have made lots of money, billions of dollars. Um, when I go to Dubai during Christmas at times, I know for certain that it's not sweat and blood that people are spending, it's crypto monies. Uh, but the truth is, I don't do what I don't understand. So I really can't. Yeah, I really, I mean, he got me to put just a token in there,
1%.
just a token in there. I said, okay, do this, let me see. I saw the thing go up 100% in 1 week, come down 50% in another week. And I kept on asking him, okay, this thing, what really is driving it? And he would tell me, oh, the US Fed, the Chinese, the Russians, this and that are buying, and that's why. I said, you know what? Just bring my money back. Just bring my money back. I'm not interested because I do not understand. and so I really can't speak too much. But maybe um, someone here can try to educate me. But if my late brother-in-law, could not teach me,
It's a thing where let the Holy Spirit guide you. If you should do the 1% or you should not even venture at all. So I have some questions from the congregation, which I'll share with you. So they said, can you both clarify the advice against debt? So someone is saying they've set up a company with a debt to equity rate of two-thirds to one-third. With the debt, they grew the company until an acquisition. Okay, with the debt, they grew the company until an acquisition by an international IOC. So they would like clarity on why we're saying we should go against debt when a lot of businesses succeed using it.
please let me take that. Sorry, Taiwo. Let me take that. It depends on the business you're going into, as far as I'm concerned. If you're starting up, you start with equity. Start with equity, right? Because there are a lot of failure points which you've probably not envisaged, regardless of how detailed your business plan is or whatever groundwork you think you've done. Debts should come at the point of scaling up. When you want to scale, there is a proof of concept with regards to your business, there are cash flows, and it's a case of you scaling up your business significantly, knowing fully well that your debt will be repaid or can be repaid. Then yes, you can embrace debt. Kemi said something that bankers don't like to hear or don't take debt. I don't really like to give debt, to be honest with you, right? Because I'm not ready to start chasing anybody here and there for monies that I know that ab initio they stood no chance of paying. In the oil and gas segment or sector, um, yes, I know a lot of people always take debt, but I can tell you 95 or 99% of them don't pay back. I can tell you that authoritatively. And most of them won't be able to pay back in their lifetime because of in their lifetime. And I pray they all live long. But but the truth about it is the size, the magnitude of the debts that have been taken, right, in a bid to either acquire, scaling up by way of acquisition, or scaling up for ventures that are very risky, right? You need to be very, very, very careful. A gearing ratio of 60 to 40, 70, 30, not a bad thing, but you need to be very, 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 very sure. I'm ready to take on the person who asked that question on oil and gas debt outside this meeting, right? And I'll tell the person that there are very, 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 very few. I think my fingers are too many to count when it comes to the number of people in this country who will be able to deal with the magnitude of debts that they're taking on their books. But yes, debt is not a bad thing, but if you're over leveraged, then you're in trouble. You're in big time trouble. And with regards to oil and gas, you see, once the monies go in and you don't, if it's field development, the monies go in, you don't hit oil, it's sunk cost, it's gone for good. The only way you can recover that money is to put in more debt. Right? And anybody who's into upstream oil and gas or financing or production or whatever will tell you that the chances, it's wildcatting when you're drilling. That's what they call it. And your chances of hitting oil is less than 20%. So except with certainty, you've done all your due diligence, you've done all your seismic, you've done everything that you need to do to be sure that there is the presence of oil. And even when you're sure that there is a presence of oil, the way and manner in which you go into that reservoir determines how well you maximize oil coming out of that reservoir. So you need to be careful. $20-30 million sunk, if it gives you 500 barrels instead of 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 barrels, you're toast. And why it always seems like it's a fantastic venture, a high profit margin venture, is because most people spend that which should go to government in terms of royalties and PPT, are willing to defray their loan obligations, right? That is why it seems like it's a high profit margin venture. The truth about it is your margins cannot be more than 20%. And in that 20% is where you service your debt. That is probably running at about 10, 11, 12, 13% interest rates. So let us be very clear with ourselves, right? If you're going to take debt in that space, you need to be absolutely certain that you're going to get those returns.
Basically, go and hear from God.
I think just to add um, to debt, I think there are all those different sorts of ways you can raise money. Spontaneous financing, whereby you have longer creditors days, shorter debtors days. I mean those are areas where you can raise capital within the business. So it's best to understand the business cycle. I'm sure you can generate some funds from there. As against, I always believe that debt should be lasting. So where it basically works, there's always an order of raising money. The first will be friends and family. After you've exhausted that, you started the business. You can now go to the bank, get an overdraft. You understand? Just to beat working capital. As you scale up again, you raise now. You're not getting capital, external capital. That's what people do. Private placements. Bring that down. They can now scale up again. Then eventually you can now do like an IPO, raise money from the market. So those are the other egos. You keep on. So you do what? Start with friends and family cycle. Once you've done that, you can do a short-term overdraft facility from the bank, access to aid working capital. Then from there, if you're expanding again, you do private placement. You now get more debt. You now expand again. You do an IPO. Yeah. You understand? At that time, you can also extract a bit of capital out. So it's a cycle, and some people have done very successful in it. But I always try to tell people that, look, debt, it gives you sleepless nights. The worst thing you can ever do to yourself is starting by debt. I think most businesses in Nigeria won't start with debt. And the reason why we can get away with it in Nigeria is because there's a lot of asymmetric information, which means there's a lot of bottlenecks, a lot of areas where you can easily maximize income. But the truth is, when you're owing the bank, I mean, it's the pressure is so much because you've now pledged your assets. They are coming after you, and I always try to tell people. And the mistake we do now, what Jide did not tell you, most entrepreneurs that are going to collect money from the bank, they will divert some of the money away. So what you tend to see is that they borrowed, let's say, 100 million naira. They will first go and buy a car, get married. Also. So there's a lot of diversion. So they've seen. That's why the banks sometimes you don't blame them in terms of their attitude towards giving out debt. They want to ensure that they've covered all the angles before departing with the money because they know that, especially in this our environment, we do divert a lot of the money away, which is bad. Am I lying? Am I lying?
I guess that speaks to financial discipline, delayed gratification. It's basically everything we've said right from the beginning. So I think we're just more or less breaking everything down. Everything we've said right from the beginning is what we're basically re-emphasizing in different shapes and forms.
Thank you so much. So please, people of God, leave death alone. Your heavenly Father owns what? A cattle on 1,000 what? Hills. So he will bring friends and family, give you favor. So basically, of course, practically speaking, let us start from, base level before wanting to jump to the sky and go and collect debt because you want to say, I have a debt portfolio in this bank. Please don't. Because you come here for prayer. I will not start praying that God should give you favor with the bank. Please, let us use wisdom. All right. So I'll take some more questions from the congregation. So someone says, I think I'll put two questions together. So they said, what career route would you recommend? 9 to 5? And again, this is for both of you to weigh in on. 9 to 5 or entrepreneurial? Any regrets with the current route you took? So I'm going to merge it with someone saying, oh, sorry, more questions have come in. So someone was talking about people have been traveling to go and walk, basically jackpine to go and look at greener pastures in other spaces. But for those that are still here, what should they do? Okay, yes. What's the biggest strengths and gaps you perceive in today's workforce? There's an element of people migrating away from Nigeria. But for those who choose to remain, what should we do? So I'm merging it with the 9 to 5 or entrepreneur. Like, what advice will you give? And are you happy with the route you took? Anyone? Anyone?
Well, for me, I'm where I'm meant to be. Um, so, in terms of career choices, I think I've been doing exactly what I intended to do. Whether so, well, I'm an entrepreneur because the business is actually owned by us. So, and what that does, it also gives you you're able to see a lot of things from different perspective. The so it depends, and you can be successful being an employee. You understand that with being an entrepreneur, that means you're working within an institution and you've actually grown, and and you can also be successful being an entrepreneur. So it depends on what your own how you're positioned and how you yourself can adapt. The truth about it, when you're an entrepreneur, you're responsible for everything. You don't even know when the next money will come, next business will come. So it also takes you out of your comfort zone. So you're not forced to do a lot of things. You're forced to um, more sociable. You're forced to do so many things. I mean, you have to be out there. You also have to be able to look at what exactly is happening within your environment, how to interpret it, looking at government policies, looking at so many other issues, and also, as Jay said, purpose is also important. What exactly are you trying to achieve? Why are you here? I think that's always the first thing. And it depends again. Success is defined differently from person A to person B. You understand? What I might conceive to be successful might be different from another person. You understand? The fact that I woke up today, you understand? I'm grateful. I'm a success. It's a success for me. You understand? I'm actually with only ill. So it's a success. So it depends. What I would tell people is that not everybody's built to be an entrepreneur. You understand? And not everybody is built to be an employee. Some people just have a lot of passion. They have a lot of things they want to do. You understand? And it's about solving problems, trying to achieve your purpose. So it depends, and you can't say this worked for A doesn't mean it worked for B. The truth is, people have started businesses that have failed, and people who have worked within an institution and have grown in that institution and doing very, very, very well. So it depends. So I wouldn't say, for me, I think I'm where I'm meant to be. You understand? I'm also very grateful. I also worked in Guarantee Trust. So I'm also grateful for the initial training I actually got from the institution. So it depends. Thank you.
Jide,
Um, for me to succeed as an employee, i.e., to rise to the top, you must have an entrepreneurial mindset as well, and that's the only way, in my own opinion, you would have a sense of duty and responsibility towards the institution or organization you work for. You don't see it as, oh, I show up here 9 to 5, I get my paycheck, I really care less about what happens to the organization. If you have that mindset, if you see yourself just as an employee, chances are that you're not going to go far because you're not going to give your absolute best. You're not going to go beyond your job description, towards achieving success for the collective. That's the collective, which I mean the organization. So I think there's a very fine line between being an entrepreneur and being um, an employee when you get to very certain levels. Right from time, I've always seen myself as an entrepreneur. I'll put it that way. I am working for the organization and I'm working for myself. My vision and mission must be aligned with that of my organization. And once they are aligned, chances are that you would always have an entrepreneurial mindset when you're working for your respective organizations. Am I happy to be where I am today? I had choices in life. Right from my university, I knew very clearly what I wanted to do, even though most people in my family felt I was better off or I was going to end up being an entrepreneur in the manner in which most people know it to be. But I looked at it from a different perspective. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I give God the glory that I am where I want to be. I don't see myself doing anything other than what I'm doing, to be brutally honest. And I'm very happy. Um, so there was the second part to that question.
So it was mainly, should they do 9 to 5 or entrepreneurial? Do you have any regrets with the current route you took?
No regrets.
For those that are still here, what should they do?
There was the one of the people relocating. Yes,
Yeah.
that's the second part. I'm going to tell you what I tell everybody. First of all, Nigeria is a land of opportunities, regardless of what people think, feel, or what you're being told, right? What you hear. You have about 200 million people in terms of population. In my own opinion, post-COVID, that should have gone up to about 300 million people. So it means you have a massive market for consumption should you decide to produce anything. In the midst of confusion lies significant and exponential opportunities, right? Because anything you do right will stand out. As long as you have some of these virtues or values that we've spoken about earlier in the day. You see, in the West, what people don't realize is there's a limit to how high you can go. And chances of you breaking into certain levels, right, is always very slim. Because if, permit me to put it this way, it's almost based on invitation. And ask yourself, you're a black man, why is a white person going to give you an opportunity to thrive? Most black people you see, if you're not careful, are probably doing the bidding of the whites. You need to be clear in your mind why or how you define success. In Nigeria today, I know, yes, it may seem like prior to 2 years ago, and please don't knock me for saying prior to 2 years ago, it seemed like everything was doom and gloom because we probably did not come up with policies or implement policies that were forward-looking, and I can understand why people were disillusioned. But the truth about it is, it's in this same country that the likes of Taiwo have emerged. Yourself, Pastor PSJ, right? You have Pastor Kemi as well, and a laundry list of lots of people who are making a very decent and noble living. I don't see any reason why it cannot work for most of us. Nigerians, I'm sorry to say this, but I believe most people are mentally lazy. Most people are physically lazy. Most people do not have a purpose. They do not have the staying power. They do not have the discipline. The orientation is just completely off. And that's why at every slightest hurdle, they think of jumping ship. You see human beings, I always tell people in my office, you don't get it right here, chances that you will not get it right anywhere else. Forget it. So don't think the grass is greener on the other side. If you cannot succeed here, right, where all that you are meant to do is carry out your responsibilities, chances are that you will not succeed where you go. You see people selling their houses, selling their furniture, trading everything to go there to become slaves. I think with everything I've said, it's obvious I do not in any form, shape, or manner subscribe to it. I know people who have traveled and they still keep sending you text messages. You leave your business here, you travel in the name of you want to give your child an education that you cannot afford, right? You go there, lose yourself, lose your personality, lose your sense of relevance as a man. Don't forget, your wife was probably cooking for you here. Your wife stands a better chance of getting a job abroad than you as a man, right? So she's not going to have time to cook for you. Instead, you're going to be the one cooking for your kids, cooking for the wife if you're not careful. We need to be very clear in our minds what we are doing. The only thing you're probably going to get will be the free education, free access to healthcare. And you ask yourself at the end of the day, 5-10 years from now, when you're 50, when you're 60 years old, what have you really done in life? Everything is now in your children, invested in your children, who probably have lost their roots, right? Who now have their own families, to deal with, right? And you will not be the center of focus for them. You're going to ask yourself lots and lots and lots of questions. Now, the government has come up with very difficult but necessary and important policies to move this country forward, in my own opinion. It's now left for people who are hardworking, who have all these values and virtues we've spoken about, to take advantage of it. Absolutely nothing good comes easy. So let us be under no form of illusion that, things are just meant to happen magically. Nothing is going to happen magically. Yeah, so thank you.
Okay. So
I think it's not change of environment, it's change of mindset. I think that's you have to change yourself, not the environment.
I actually had the question I was preparing for Taiwo, but you touched on the woman cooking and all of that. So I told you the Holy Spirit is here. So someone actually sent a question. Now, while before you said that, so it's a nice way to segue into that. So they said, how much does your spouse support your journey? How much do you involve her? They put her, it's not me. How much do you involve her in financial decision making? So over to you, men.
Okay. I think the foundation of every relationship is about trust. I think that's very important. What we try to do as much as possible is that we co-own a lot of our assets together. I think that makes a lot of things easier, transparency and all. So in terms of decision making, I carry along with most of the things that we're doing. Likewise, she's also she's an Amazon, so she has her own aspirations and plans as well. So, and one thing I can never be accused of, I've also allowed her to fly. So, uh, so until recently, my wife has been living in the UK, so she's been shuttling back and forth. So, and things worked out. You understand? So now I'm saying that it depends on, again, I always tell people it depends on your upbringing, how you see how the relationship should be. I think the best thing that happened to us is that when we were getting married, okay, I was a matured groom. Huh? I'm 18. I was already 35. But what I meant by that was that at least clearly I really knew what I wanted in marriage. And the beauty about it, when we went for our wedding counseling, they already asked us to write what are your expectations out of the marriage. Me, I wrote 2 pages. My wife wrote half a page. She had to do receipts. Because obviously, because I knew clearly uh, what I wanted. And the truth is, a lot of the things she wanted, she also got, especially the part of kids. She wanted two boys. Huh? Our prayers were answered. Boah. Huh? I wanted at least a daughter. So my twin brother has twins. So one of his kids is also my daughter now. Then I've also told my sons that, your wives, they're my daughters. So I believe that it's about what you guys set out, your purpose, your goals for the marriage, and what you expect, your expectations out of the marriage. Thank you.
Thank
Um,
you.
well, maybe I'll start by saying I've known my wife since I was 19, right? So,
Oh,
and every single step of my journey, she's been involved in, and likewise, myself. So we've been together since I was 19, and that kind of tells you that with regards to decision making, she's been part of it all the way. I won't be here today successful, depending on how you choose to define success without her. Whatever I am today is a function of how we both lived our lives and how we both governed ourselves. So she's been very fundamental. In terms of investments, I don't make any decisions because whatever I do affects her and my kids. They are my primary constituency. So she knows about everything. It's not a function of should we go, should we not go. At times I try to exercise veto, remove what I believe that is in the best interest of the family, and whatever benefits are surely, for both of us and the kids as well. Yeah.
okay. Thank you. So we release you on that one. But I think my takeaway from that is, your spouse is there for you to grow and build together. And of course, in becoming one flesh, because last week we spoke on partnerships in marriage and business, Adam and Eve concept. So basically, the Adams, please hold your Eve. Of course, not from the perspective of the fruit, but you know what I mean. You grow together, you build together, you are one. So if God doesn't deposit the rema or the wisdom to you, most surely to be your wife. Can I get an amen? Okay.
It's very important as a man. It's very important as a man. So yes, I say from time to time I try to veto certain things when it comes to investment decisions, when I have a very strong conviction about something. Chances that those things don't turn out as well as I thought they will. And she just tells me in a subtle manner, well, I told you. I'd be like, well, you have to gamble at times. But you must always listen to your wife if you have a good wife. If you have a good wife. Oh yeah, it's very important. No, Kem, your P Chems knows me very well. I like to be very upfront. If you have a good wife, and my prayer is that all of us end up with, everybody ends up with good spouses, wife, husband. You must always listen to them, because once they kneel down and pray, chances are that God, and their tears hit the ground, God is going to listen to them. And if they are praying in your favor, then you're blessed, right? Even when you don't pray, as a man, trust me, you can confidently outsource your prayers to your wife and be rest assured that you are fully covered. So you must listen to your wife if you have a good wife. And anything that has to do with your home, business decisions, please, please, please try as much as possible to carry her along, because God forbid if anything happens, these are the people that will pray for you, that will stand in gap for you when the world turns their back on you.
Thank you, yes. Thank you. So, husbands, you know what's up, right? Okay. So, Taiwo, someone said they're addressing this question to you. They said, as a growing investment analyst, how can I effectively introduce digital assets to my clients while ensuring they understand the potential benefits? Additionally, what is the best way for me to communicate my compensation structure? Should I inform them that I earn a percentage of their investments? Or will it be more beneficial to create a customized portfolio and offer a performance based fee?
I think the first thing is transparency. Um, it depends. You don't want to have a one-off transaction, so it's always good to let your client know upfront what you're charging, what your fees are. Naturally, everybody expect that you should earn something for the work is being done. The beauty today, also you have to be very careful. A lot of the information about anything is readily available, so you must genuinely add value. Um, how do you sell? Well, I think the easiest way is to start from educating your audience or your investors about the product. Once you do a lot of broadcast, a lot of information, do a lot of articles, memos sent out to clients, over time, you understand, you would get people to come and invest with you. So I think that's always the best way. You must give something to get something back in return. It takes time, but over time, you will tend to see that your clients will keep on increasing. The beauty about today is that you have so much outlets. You can use Instagram. You can use well, Facebook. I'm not on any of them, so I don't really know. But I know you can use a lot. My wife is. So you can use a lot of the digital platforms to get a lot of your information out there, and naturally, you would over time try to get your right clients.
Thank you very much. I know our time. I have so many. I'm still, and I know some of us have meetings and stuff, but there are some very, at least two important questions I would love for both of you to answer. So the first being, can you share an example of a failure in business that shaped your career? So we've heard all the expert advice. We want to break it down to practical life experiences so that we can connect with the advice you're giving. So in everything you've experienced, can you give us one
Yes,
that
I
has
can.
shaped? Yes, please.
And that's why I talk about debt. There was this investment that I took, and I took a loan for it from GT Bank, and I pledged my assets. Huh?
You go and check.
No, no, and I think the error there was that I didn't do enough due diligence. You understand? And um, and also, if something is too true to believe, naturally, that's the truth. Uh, um, and I think sometimes I also underestimated. I was trying to be very bullish. What the person asked for initially, I looked at it. Is that all? Yeah. Guess what? I would fund the entire thing, and not having a better understanding of the industry, and also I didn't do enough due diligence, and thank God everything worked out. Well, I had to pay off the bank eventually, but I think that was the learning point. And I think that also shaped even my own orientation about even taking risk. That's why the first thing I said was, if I have to look at anything, can I edge it? I'm always very, very mindful of what I'm doing. Um, and I think that was one. Um, I'll leave it as that. I think that really shaped my own orientation about even risk and reward. Initially, everybody will give you a very glossy analysis of projection. And, although when we started off, it was, I'll give a debenture, we had a strike price, we convert it to equity. Because I didn't want to give him the money outright. You understand? Eventually, well, the money went into other things. And I thought I had full control because I had the checkbook as one funding him. But people could always, as I said, I didn't do enough due diligence. And I also believe that before anything, relationship is key in anything you do. It's from relationship business comes. When people tell you there is no strictly business, I don't believe so. There must always be some element of relationship um, that you have with someone before you can eventually now go into that business. It was an introduction, so it wasn't so I developed enough relationship. That's why I said the due diligence wasn't properly done. I think I take the fall for that. So, but well, that's now history. And there's always a learning point. What I want to say about there is failure. The beauty about failure is that it's not the end. You must learn to fail forward, which means that at every point in time, what were the experiences you learned from that decision you've taken? That will also shape your decisions in taking other decisions in the near future. So I never believe you must fail to grow. That's the honest truth. If you decide that you don't take any risk, fair enough, but you will not grow. Everybody will tell you, even though Aliko Dangote will tell you that things he knows today, he will never build a refinery. It's because he was very resilient and he kept on pushing, kept on pushing, kept on pushing. Now today, the refinery is there. So now I said that you must learn from your mistakes, and every is always how do you undo those mistakes. And I took a cue as well. For me to move on, I had to literally move on and start from scratch, because the bad part is if I'm focusing on him, get EFCC, pick him up. I'm just going to spend all my resources and my energy trying to recoup money I cannot recoup back. So the best thing for me to do, let me find money and pay back GT Bank. And, rest is history. But I think that was the learning point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Today.
To be honest, I'm not sure I've had that many experiences. Say for one, which my wife told me not to, and I told her no, this was going to be a good investment. And she reminded me that it was against a lot of what I'd always said, not from a value standpoint. There was nothing immoral about it. It was just the parties that were going to be involved and I was going to be involved with. And I chose to go along. And I'd set my risk limits at 1.5 and said to myself, when I get to 1.5, if I don't get what I want 100%, I was going to pull out. And when I started, it seemed like, okay, I was getting everything I wanted. So it meant that more investments or more capital had to go in. And it seemed like there was a way around one of the thorny issues that I'd said I would never want to have to deal with. So it seemed like there was a way around it. But at the end of the day, COVID happened. The way around it was no longer there owing to COVID. And therefore, I was now exposed to the risk factors I'd said I'd never wanted to be exposed to. And on the basis of that, I just pulled back. I said, you know what, I'm not going beyond this. So for some other people, they may have chosen, I know a couple of people who chose to go along or go ahead in their various, I later found out that different people were also trying to invest in certain things. And they went ahead with whatever they chose or they wanted to go ahead with. They are still living in those problems till today. A $1 million, $1.5 billion problem can easily snowball into a $5, $10 million problem, because the deeper you go, the more resources you commit, the higher the risk, the higher your capital, which stands at risk. So I just decided to, at this point. So for me, that's the only investment that I feel, even though the returns or the rewards, in my own opinion, was going to be annuity and exponential. But I just knew it wasn't for me and I just pulled back. So it again, I didn't have to deal. Thankfully, I didn't have to deal with any debt that had nothing to do with debt, because that would have been catastrophic if I had to. I hate it. I know how I deal with people who who owe me. So so I can't. Yeah. So I can't imagine having to deal with that. Yeah. So I think that's my own fair share of experience, but nothing that I didn't snap out of very quickly.
All right, thank you.
I think also to add that you must always diversify. Concentration risk is also very dangerous. I think it's also the mistake a lot of us do make. We always believe that you're in full control of all the various factors, but you might not have, you might not know it all. So diversification is very, very key. Wide counsel. You know, I was with, I heard Bloomberg make a statement one day that anywhere he goes to, he must always have his counsel beside him. So he can't say a word without getting clarification from his counsel. Also, he's CFO. So, which means that at every point in time, he doesn't talk loosely. Before he takes any decision, he must confirm from those two before he okays it. So it's very important you also get wide counsel and which I mentioned, do the necessary due diligence, which is very key. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I said one more again because I know our time is up, but this is very important for us as a church to know. So we've spoken on purpose, we've spoken on impact. And I know, I mean, from working closely with Jide, you're very into giving back in terms of whether it's personal projects, church projects, um, tithing, and also with Taiwo as VC of Olasore International. Um, I know it's a hub where you can raise leaders, you know, for this generation. So it's speaking of impact, you're making money, but you're also sowing it out there. So I wondered, my question really is, what roles have your giving and your tithing from this success that God has given you? What does it play in your financial life and your business journey so far? And what can you advise us? Because a lot of time people look at profit over purpose. People are all about, I have to make the money, I have to make the money. I'm so busy. I don't have time to think of anything else. But what impact should we be looking to make once we get into that success threshold?
If you recall at the beginning, I said money should be a tool towards serving God. And it seems like we're ending on that note. Um, when God blesses us, right, He doesn't bless us for ourselves, because whether we inherit wealth from our parents or we make it or create it ourselves, we need to know that we came to this world without nothing. And then we came to this world empty. We met everything here, and we're certainly going to leave everything here. It therefore means that the blessings God has bestowed on you must be for the blessings of others and to the glory of His name. That's the way I live my own life. And on the basis of that, I try as much, well, in the past, when I was much younger, I never wanted anybody to come to me with a problem and leave. I must have told you this before, and leave empty handed, leave without a solution. It meant that everybody's problem became my problem, as I grew older. But again, I also learned that you need to be very careful when God starts to elevate you, because elevation is a process of separation, whether we like it or not. It therefore means that not everybody would have access to you, unfettered access to you, the way they typically may have had in the past. And therefore, my own way of dealing with it was to create a foundation. And we decided to pick on certain areas that we felt we could impact on lives, right? we set up a foundation called BNO Foundation. It's my name, my wife's name, and our son name, our initials and son name. And the whole essence is touching lives from a medical standpoint. And I believe to a very large extent, a substantial part of my resources has gone towards it. And we've tried as much as possible, and same as my wife's, we've tried as much as possible to keep it to ourselves in the sense that the funding has come from our own pockets. I don't want anybody's donations, and not because I don't really want it, but I just want to keep it simple because I know what the purpose is and the rationale for setting it up. So we try as much as possible to, we've tried as much as possible to touch lives as best as we can. From a professional standpoint, I always see our 42 million customers as part of the lives I'm touching as Guaranteed Trust Bank. And why or how do I mean this? As long as I continue to I try as much as possible to make the right decisions for the benefit of the organization. And I continue to protect depositors' funds and give healthy returns to shareholders. I believe I'm keeping 40 something odd people, million people happy. And that's my own way, again, from a professional standpoint of touching lives. I also believe that people learn by watching other people, right? I really don't need to come out and start to make noise. The organization doesn't really need to come out and start to make noise. As long as we do things that are worthy of emulation and we become a standard in the country for which everybody wants as set as the benchmark for the right things, how organizations should be run, how institutions should be run. It therefore means our customers, and maybe even beyond our 42 million customer base also, would embrace us and would get some form of gratification, some form of knowledge, some form of understanding of how things should be done or can be done properly. So it's multidimensional, right? How I believe to a very large extent that I, from a charitable standpoint, I'm impacting lives.
Thank you. Taiwo?
Okay, so as a family, we have a foundation, OSA Foundation, and we focus on two primary areas: mental wellness. That's the first. Second is also education, scholarship education. We also sponsor two other schools, and the idea behind it is because, like Jude rightly said, at one point in time, you must always give. Giving is living. Natural instinct. There are 6 needs we all need to have. I'm not going to go through them. One, the last one is giving. And as such, you must give. And you also realize that the more you give, the more you will get. So it's like when you're pouring one water into a glass, it's always going to overflow. So I've also seen that from our own charitable contribution. So it's also very important. You must naturally give. It's just one of the few things you must do. I'm also very, very grateful for the things I have. I have a gratitude journal I complete every day to look at the things I'm grateful for. And so I'm always very mindful that there are also people that are beside me or around us that don't have that privilege or the privileges that I have had all throughout my life. So it's very important that I don't. So there are two different things. I can give, but I don't lend. So there are two different things. Just like, and again, if you're one that is always, so you have to put it through a structure, because without a structure, what you tend to realize is that people come, any spontaneous things, you're following other people's lifestyle. So the best thing to do is put in a proper structure And that's why we have a foundation which caters primarily to those two areas. Mental wellness is very, very key for us as a family, from a standpoint that um, even in Nigeria alone, there are only about 250 psychiatric doctors in the whole of Nigeria for a population of over 200 or 300 million people. So what we try to do every year, we do in October, during the Wellness Week, World Wellness Week. We convey, we get speakers to come and talk. We also raise money. So we're also looking at how to design the program across schools, how to manage mental wellness for the adolescent child. Well, I didn't mention for the adolescent child from age 10 to age 17. I think that is also a very critical age where we believe that the impact is adequately felt. Likewise, also to charity, I think we actually manage two other public schools, yes, which we fund. We changed the dynamics a bit. Before we used to give them a funding every year, but we changed it to giving scholarships instead. So I think that is one area we've felt that we should address.
That's worthy of a great applause for both of them. And I mean, we have so many more questions, but we would leave it till another day where we would sit down again. And I'm sure on that day too, they'll send more questions. But please, can we give a round of applause to these ones that have come to share with us? And before they leave, I'd just like us to stretch our hands and pray over them because God has called them to be captains in their industry. And in as much as we've taken, we need to pour back. So can we just speak a word of blessing that what they've come to or what they've achieved is just the minimal part of what is ahead. That the Lord will anoint them afresh and anew for what He has placed ahead of them. They will not fall short, they will not lack strength, and the divine wisdom they need to operate in, that God will give them the grace to do so in Jesus' name. Father, I thank you for Jide and I thank you for Taiwo. Thank you for them obeying you in coming to give back to kingdom in terms of the wisdom you furnished them with and the experiences you've blessed them to have. Lord, even as they've imparted upon us, let it have great impact in our lives. This seed they've sown, Father, come and water it and cause it to bear fruit so that 5 years or even 2 years down the line, whenever we get a chance to see them again, we'll tell them that talk you had on that day really blessed my life and created a shift for me. So, Lord, bless them for their obedience and be with them as they go out now. Let them have a great week and let their life echo in the halls of legacy on earth in Jesus' name. Thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.